Welcome to this webinar. This is Kimon ONUMA, ONUMA Inc. We're the creators of the ONUMA System and BIM Storm and BIM Genie. And thank you for joining our webinar today. Next slide. So we're calling it Building Informed Environments, and this is the launch of our 2021 version of the ONUMA System. We started this journey in 1988 when we started using 3D and data, and we started with BIM in 93, and then we've evolved quickly into developing our own software, our applications back then, to be able to connect to desktop BIM applications, and that is what generated the ONUMA System, which was initially meant for our own internal use, but then we opened it up to the industry due to requests from clients and colleagues, and it has been used for many different things internally, for example, with the California community colleges. But here we are in 2021, and we think this is a milestone because of the changes that have happened in the last several years even, and now with the end of Flash, it gave us an opportunity for the last several years to build up the capabilities of the ONUMA System. So we're excited to bring you this today. Next slide. So this is what it used to look like. This is the ONUMA System that's been around for quite a long time now. Actually, the origins go back 20 years. But we had a Flash interface that was the best interface in that period to be able to visualize graphics and edit them. That was very important for us, so we could actually grab a shape, for example, that plane or that space, and move it around. At the same time, being able to drive data into the server in the background and to collaborate in real time with others on the web. So as changes are made, others that have access to view or edit would be able to see the information. The new interface that we'll show you next is very similar to this. There are similarities. It's been cleaned up, but the back end has also been updated to speed things up, and the functionality has changed. There's new additions, and it's been simplified too. That's one thing that we really worked on quite a bit, not only to make it easier to navigate, but also to be able to use cross-platform. And that's been going to be the huge difference now that we migrated away from Flash. We can work on mobile devices, on iOS, Android, or any device actually with the exact same interface. So next slide. So here's the new interface. It has a similar navigation on the left for drilling through from the site down to the building level. And you see the mobile views of the same information that you can actually even edit in the mobile view too, if you have the right login and access. It's all about deciding who gets access to view and edit, and to keep the access simple, so even a non-BIM user can actually get to their data. There's also a continuous zoom feature. So in the previous version, as you got zoomed in from the world view down to the site, down to the building, and into the space, you had to load each individual space separately because we were streaming data as you accessed it. In the new version, as you're zooming into the floor plan, you'll start seeing content inside the space start to build up. So even on a large floor plan like this airport, you can actually start seeing more detailed information as you zoom in. And this is being built up from the database in the background from the ONUMA server. There are some new buttons along the bottom that are you'll see on the left side view that you can select the slab or the space or the content, the component, the furniture in the room. It was built so it can be used both on the mobile, and we decided to add a little bit more functionality to make it easier for the mobile user to be able to get to the exact same information. But we did spend quite a bit of time to make sure that the functionality and the buttons and the features are same regardless of where you're looking at the information. So next slide. So over the years, the ONUMA System has been used for a lot of different things. It can obviously be used for designing and planning new facilities, but also for managing existing facilities. So having an inventory, a portfolio of information that you can very rapidly get to. That was one of our early objectives as architects and users of BIM in the 90s. we had all these files that were separate BIMs for different buildings. But imagine a campus like this where you wanted to quickly get to that floor plan or the piece of information without having to open up the full model and be able to see the same information in the view in the ONUMA system that we would see in our desktop BIM application. So this is a view of the California Community Colleges, which has over 5,000 buildings, 73 million square feet. This is a snapshot of some district campuses with the buildings. And if you open up any of these buildings, there's different levels of development of the floor plan. Some of them originated in Revit, some of them originated in CAD, and some of them originated in the ONUMA system. But having the same information accessible at many different levels of detail and at many different scales, both from a geography perspective, zooming down to the building and the plan. In the new system, as I mentioned earlier, the functionality has been greatly improved as far as zooming in and zooming out. It's a very rapid way of seeing a huge amount of data. And then if you needed to open up a more detailed BIM in Revit, for example, the same IDs exist in the ONUMA system as are in Revit, including the link that we have with an API and a plugin into Revit or ArchiCAD or SketchUp and other applications. So this functionality has been expanded. And next slide. A module of the ONUMA system that many of you might not be aware of, but it's been gaining momentum for us, is BIM Genie, which is a work order and preventive maintenance, a facility management application that's built on top of the ONUMA system. This is one use that the ONUMA system has beyond just the ONUMA system interface, to be able to use the same BIMs and the same plan files and the same geometries and attributes to be able to give users, for example, somebody inside a classroom, inside a building that knows the room is too hot or the window is broken, to be able to submit a work request through the BIM. So the BIM becomes the interface to attach information and communicate between different stakeholders, whether they're technical or non-technical users, all the way up to the executives that they want to see how our building's doing. And this is one interesting use case from an existing facility point of view, as well as being able to import and add new facilities and buildings as they're being added. Now with the COVID crisis that we're in, this is actually an interesting use case, because knowing what buildings and facilities you have and how to either plan on opening them back up or plan on rearranging the density inside spaces or plan for new uses, it becomes a perfect platform to be able to do that. Next slide. So it's always been a focus on simplicity, even with the work order system or the ONUMA system. A lot of our users and us ourselves, we don't want to be burdened with, you need 30 days of training to understand how to submit a work request or how to get to information about BIM. So for example, this is the interface that the occupant of a space with minimal or zero training, basically just log into a website. Who are you? Where are you? It brings up a floor plan, and then you can submit the request, and this request then ends up in the database and gets sent to the correct stakeholders to be able to respond to the request. So the technician and the administrators all at the same time being connected to the building information model in the background in the ONUMA system. Next slide. So this is what the technician would see coming in, whether they're in the field with a mobile device that says, here comes a request for a plumbing issue in this space. The diagram of the space is not just a JPEG or an image, it's a live plan. So if we were in the editor view of this and we were updating the floor plan, everybody that has access to the floor plan would immediately see the latest layout, or would immediately see that room highlighted and say, this is where the request is coming in. And that's one of the unique features of the ONUMA system from the very beginning, has been how do we keep as much of the data live in real time as possible? Because if you start having files and duplicates and having to transform data from one to the next, then you get this inconsistency of information. And how do you keep it simple as well? Next slide, please. So here's the overall architecture of it. We have a BIM server that's in the cloud, and we were in the cloud very early on, actually, years ago. We started on the web in 1993, actually, and started building solutions on the web since then. But having, we early on in our BIM journey, when we were working on desktop BIM applications, we realized that if we wanted to share information about projects in the same room even, or even across the world, having a place to park that information in the cloud and then be able to view it in the web interface, which we just introduced. The web interface on the left side is the new 2021 version of the interface that you see the planned data. So either you're a viewer of the data, or if you have the right to edit it and say, well, the shape of this room changed, or we did a renovation, or we added a new piece of furniture, that would be added in that interface, and then it would be pushed immediately into the cloud, the BIM server. And then down below that, other applications like dashboards. It's not only dashboards that could be built into applications, but separately on separate applications. In this case, we're showing a Google Sites that's reading data live from the ONUMA BIM server, the same data that would be showing up in the plan. This strategy has allowed us to rapidly build functionality and not have to bake everything into one monolithic application. It's modules that can be plugged together and expanded. And that's the same thing with a mobile interface. There's a different views in the mobile interface that can be used. For example, way on the right side is the BIM Genie work order that we just talked about. So that user's view of the complex BIM might be just, I'm in this room and there's something going in this room. Whereas if somebody is in Revit or other desktop BIM applications or other BIM applications, we have plugins that link to the server. So we can say this room number has changed, for example, or there's additional attributes related to this piece of equipment, Kobe or whatever, and that can be processed through the server and made accessible to everybody. That is the key differentiator here, that we keep it lightweight enough, but it still has the full power of the IDs in the database in the background to be able to link to things, to be able to access information, and to be able to edit and update if you have the right access levels. And on the web, and this is something that's been developed over the years, we've developed strategies of how do you build different user groups and how do you give access to view and edit and interact with each other in real time. On the upper right, we've had what's called a web API. These are web services or abilities to read and write from that server. So to build new functionality, new applications, whether we build them at ONUMA or whether others, our partners or clients, want to connect to their database, we don't have to import the data into our server. We can read from it, for example, or they can read from us. So the California Community College example that I gave earlier, that has been going on for many years now, they have a Fusion database in the cloud as well, which we helped guide them towards actually opening up and building in a way that we can access. We see their data. So if they change the name of a space, they're the owners of the name and the room number. And we see that name and room number in the ONUMA system on our web device. That's a specific use case where they own the room number, but we own the layout of the space because we're managing the layout of the floor plan. That architecture allows you to scale very quickly and also not to have to coordinate. The more live linking that's possible like this, the more coordinated the process becomes. That's not the only way to bring data in and out. We have import and export with Excel and import and export with the Revit plugin, for example, or export or import of Kobe for facility management applications. In case, for example, somebody wants to take data out or link to their own facility management application, not BIM Genie, then it's possible. That's a very unique angle of ours over the years, is to keeping the data open and accessible in an open format, so not to have to rely only on one application, not even relying only on our application. That functionality has given us great value for our own projects, but has also generated new value in consulting that we have worked with owners on, helping them guide on the development of their own systems. Whether they use our application or not, the strategy is valid regardless, looking at it from a modular perspective. So that's been very exciting for us over the years. And this new update to the ONUMA System 2021, we've greatly improved the API and the ability to quickly link to it. So any developers out there, anybody that wants to expand what you're doing with your applications, we welcome you to try this out as well. Please contact us about that. Next slide. So the live API, here's one example that I mentioned earlier, the Fusion database, which is 73 million square feet of facilities, the name of the facility, the size of the square footage of the space, the condition of the space, the name of the ID of the space, how many people can fit in the space. All that data is live and maintained in Fusion. And the ONUMA system reads from Fusion. So if the number of the room is changed in Fusion, we immediately see it on our floor plans. Or if the condition of the space changes, or if the space gets renovated and deleted even, or if a new space gets added in Fusion, we immediately see that shape in ONUMA. That's a live web API connection to Fusion. Next slide. And something recent this year, we've been working with a partner called Safety Zone, which has a COVID-19 solution, a safety solution for tracking, healthcare tracking, and it can go all the way into tracking entry and exit from a building or entry and exit from a space, all the sensors and the ability to scan information and relate it to a location, because that is so important, not only in this use case, but any type of use case. I mentioned earlier about there's a water on the floor, the room is hot, knowing the location where that is happening, whether from a maintenance perspective or from a COVID-19 response to what do we do about our buildings when we want to open them back up to the public? How do we keep everybody safe? How do we keep the density at the right amount? And how do we know how to track potential issues, forecast them, but also track them in the future if we need to rewind and find out what happened 2 weeks ago? And that's what Safety Zone is all about. And this is part of the API that I mentioned earlier. It makes it easier for us to connect to solutions like this. Next slide, please. So we always have had a trial version of the ONUMA system available. With this new 2021 version, we're extending that trial for 3 months. We really want you to try it out for 3 months and completely unrestricted as far as the number of projects you want to put in there, even the amount of data, even the amount of attached files. It's all open as far as how many projects you want to create and test it out. It makes it easier to jump in and try it. So for new users, it's $1 for 3 months. Next slide. So the overall strategy that we've been talking about from the beginning is about building informed environments. How do we make that happen? We make that happen by making the BIM data accessible across all the different parts of the life cycle and all the different tools, whether they're our own tools or other applications. So if you have owner requirements, we have a program to BIM website, which we won't cover today, but it's basically collecting the owner requirements and creating a BIM on the fly of those the room standards, for example. How big is the space? What needs to go inside it? How many air changes do we need per hour? All that type of information can be defined there and then linked into the planning and design that could happen in the ONUMA system and also connected to other applications. And as you go into construction, ONUMA was one of the first applications to work with COBE and the COBE challenges very, very early on. We actually helped develop and guide the standard development on that. COBE is a great way to keep data neutral and move data from design into facilities and operations. And the ONUMA system itself has a built-in COBE checker to see if it's a valid file. It also has a way to organize the data inside ONUMA related to spaces and equipment. So internally at ONUMA, when we work with Revit and the ONUMA system, we pass the data from Revit into ONUMA and manage the COBE data in ONUMA associated with a Revit model, and then export that out to other applications through COBE or into the BIM Genie system that's already built into as a plugin into ONUMA. So it's all possible through this open architecture to be able to build informed environments in the physical and digital world. Next slide. So this is the new interface. Just real quickly, we won't get into the technical details of it, but it has a navigation tree on the left where you would see the site and the building drilling into the space. It's all just a tree structure where you can unfold and jump to any place in the structure. In the middle is the graphical interface of the floor plan And there's different, there's not a lot of buttons. We intentionally kept the number of buttons and features to a minimum. Even though there's a lot of power in the background, you can do a lot more. We kept it minimal so you can actually get up and running without a lot of extensive training. You can just try it out. And there's a couple of key points I want to make here. One is there's a view mode where you can view and collect and see the data, but cannot edit and change it. And there's also an edit mode. If you hit the edit button on the upper right, the green one, view and data, it goes into edit mode, and you can actually grab a shape and reshape it if you have the right access levels. So that's a way to control if you want to lock the building and say this is existing condition and give access to others to view the data. And then you give assignments to different users to update the floor plan, for example. They would have the right to edit it. There's infinite variations of color coding and adding attributes to spaces and content. We intentionally kept the model inside the ONUMA system simple, but it's still the same shape that would be in Revit. If there was a space in Revit, that would be the same space. As you get into more detailed design and construction, then you use other BIM applications for that. In the reverse direction, it's been used a lot for documenting existing facilities, because you can start with a very simple model, existing model. Imagine if all you had is a PDF floor plan. You can import that, put the shapes on the building, and all of a sudden you have a simplified BIM immediately that can be used for analysis or facility management, like we showed on the work order system in BIM Genie. The panels on the left and right open and close by collapsing the buttons. We have, we call it the hamburger menu on the drop down on the upper right, where you would actually be able to click to submit questions. There's a help, get in touch with us. If there's a question, that's the fastest way to contact us if there's an issue. And there's also import and export from that. And on the upper left, you can navigate away from this particular project into the site, into other studios. And I think that's the last slide. And Young, I don't know if you have time to open up system.onuma.com if you're logged in or not, but I could kind of wrap this up. If not, we can end here, but if you have time to open it up, we can spend a couple minutes just showing it live. So thank you for joining us today. My contact information on Twitter is there. You can contact us through the system, like I mentioned. We call it BIM mail, where you can actually send messages through the BIM. So when you're asking us for support or wanting to get a link into the help of that particular interface, then that's the fastest way to get to us. We plan on having more support webinars like this. This one we wanted to keep it short. Sorry for the little bit of late start. We had a little glitch in the beginning. But thank you for joining us today, and track us for future updates so we would have more technical walkthroughs of the system. Thank you, Thank you, and we'll be logging off.
Okay, so that was interesting. A very slow start. Thank you for your patience through that. And then just an overview. The Asset Leadership Network has had BIM storms with the ONUMA team in the past, and as part of his patronage of the ONUMA system patronage of the ALN, I suspect we will have some BIM storms in the future that demonstrate how these processes work. Nick, were you able to see any questions or comments? I was not able to.
Sure. Yeah, there was some discussion just about the AJAG course, but I didn't see any questions come through the chat or the Q&A about Kimon's presentation.
Okay. I do want to emphasize that from my own perspective and from the Asset Leadership Network, what we're doing is promoting the process of using the open standards and the API capabilities which is the application programming interface that allows the information to be shared securely among different software programs. And that's the feature, the process that we are strong advocates for. One of the things that Kimon did not mention was that the ability to use the software in that test period is very useful when engaging in these BIM storm activities. If anyone from the ALN is interested in that, we can work on things together. So Art Curlin is one of the people who was online, and Art was a participant earlier this year in a BIM storm activity with ONUMA. And Art, if there's any comments that you would like to make, we'd appreciate them. We could even turn you on if you would like, so that you could talk. And another thing that Kimon did not mention, understandably so, is his work with the federal government. Things are very touchy right now with the federal government, and just want to reinforce that these processes are being used in federal government. Oh, Art, we've got the chipmunk voice again. Sometimes when we've worked on the web with Art, there's been an audio problem. And I think we're having an audio problem again. So if you were to make any comments, please enter them in the chat and we'll have Nick read them. Sorry that the audio is not working. Jim?
Yeah, I was just, well, there was a second. Wanted to say I appreciated the presentation. This is interesting. And I just wanted to add one comment regarding the AJAG training that I was involved in helping to develop. But I've taught it a couple times, and there was a question about what level of, were people coming into the class. And what I can say is I've taught classes where we had in the same room people that were very expert in asset management and people that, got assigned to this job the day before and knew nothing. And they all found it very useful, and it achieved the goal, I think, especially useful in a team setting, of everybody speaking the same language and understanding what rope we're all pulling on. So really found it worked. Very straight to the point. It's just about the standard. There's other kind of training on asset management, lots available in different places. But if you want to know the standard, I think this is the best one there is.
So a couple things about that. One, I think it's appropriate for me to say that I am working with the Andrew James Advisory Group to combine their training with a BIM storm approach and other industry-specific knowledge into a University of District of Columbia continuing education course. So things are starting to come together. And we'd like to say that Art Curlin is sending comments, and he's saying that the system is impressive. And in the demonstration, we built a virtual field hospital in minutes. And those presentations are recorded and are on our website. So it's available for people to review and understand. But look forward to upcoming activities that show how to use these tools and processes in an asset management application. You can't establish an effective strategic asset management plan unless you have a full understanding of what's possible now. And the way tools are being developed so quickly, it's hard for people to keep up with everything. And the Asset Leadership Network wants to be a source of information on how to use the most current tools and processes to solve the pressing asset management problems we're facing.